You're listening to the IB4E Coaching Podcast.
Brought to you by IB4E Coaching, business coaching for executives, entrepreneurs, and small business professionals. Learn more at ib4e-coaching.com. Hey, Coach Harlan here. Welcome back to the podcast. Hope you guys are having an exceptional week. I'm having a great week, and I'm excited to introduce you to my guest. Please help me welcome Dr. Tenia Davis. Tenia Davis is an accomplished human resource executive, an award-winning author, and organizational behavior expert with extensive leadership experience in high-performing organizations. With a PhD in value-driven leadership and an MBA, Tenia is recognized for her expertise in change management and her unwavering commitment to cultivating inclusive, high-performing workplace cultures. Her global business acumen and passion for developing future leaders have earned her accolades for driving transformative impact in the field of human resources. Dr. Davis is redefining what it means to lead in human resources. As a distinguished HR executive with a stellar record of success, Tenia has made her mark in the upper echelons of globally recognized companies, including HBR Consulting, Raise, iManage, Johnson Publishing Company, and HARPO Productions. That's Oprah Winfrey's company. And now serving as a chief people officer at NORC, N-O-R-C. That's the National Opinion Research Center at the University of Chicago. She continues to elevate the standards of operational excellence, talent acquisition, and administrative services. Dr. Davis holds an MBA from Loyola University Chicago and a PhD from Benedictine University at the Center of Value-Driven Leadership. Yes. Dr. Davis, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be part of the conversation.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this so much. And I want to honor your doctorate because that's a lot of work that you put into it. It's a huge amount of work and stuff. Can I call you Tenia? Is that okay?
Tenia is perfect.
Okay. All right. You've got a lot of books. You've published a lot of different books. A couple of the books that I wanted to talk about was one is the 8 Essential Steps to Inspire Others and Build a Thriving Workforce, and the Feedback Blueprint, Unlocking the Power of Constructive Insights. What do you mean by constructive insight framework? What is that?
So typically the feedback, it's the feedback loop is you focus on the situation, you provide feedback around that situation, and in giving feedback, you basically help the person understand where they need to either make improvements, what have you. I see the constructive insights a little bit differently in adding on self-awareness and self-reflection, because what I've found is that feedback, what I've seen in my career is that feedback is not one-sided, right? So there's the person giving the feedback, and then there's the person receiving the feedback. And what tends to happen is if you don't have a relationship with that person or there isn't trust, if trust is missing, then the person will hear it and it'll bounce off, right? Whereas you really want folks to kind of understand and have context so that they can continue to improve, evolve, and hopefully continue in their career trajectory.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they have to trust and feel. I guess trust. There's no better word for it. You have to trust the people that are they're telling you this. They're giving you this feedback because they want you to be better. They want to help you be better at what it is you do. And you have to trust that these comments are not just digs, right? They're not just animosity because you're in a different position they are. You have to trust that they're wanting to help me and take that in.
Right. Exactly. And what I found is that individuals that are able to kind of move through their learning curve a lot faster are individuals that have self-reflection and have self-awareness. And when that doesn't exist, then that's where I've seen individuals struggle, right? And so the whole purpose of the blueprint, the feedback blueprint, is to provide that kind of in a consumable way so someone doesn't have to read through 50 pages, but just maybe I designed it so it's chapter by chapter. So if you master 1, 2, and 3, you can go to 4, get the information you need, have examples, and know how to apply it and move on, right? But what I found through my career is that I haven't met an organization that likes going through performance appraisals. I don't know about you. I haven't met
No,
an
no.
organization yet that enjoys it. And the reason why is because it involves a lot of communication. And if the leader has not, indulged in those conversations throughout the year, then you get to the end of year and it's like a throw up of information, right?
Right.
And nobody
Yeah.
wants to be in that situation.
No.
So now you're thinking back, oh, in January of 2024, and then you did not deliver on time. And and the employees tend to leave the conversation more frustrated, right? And of
Sure.
course they shut
Well,
down and they're not listening. And and so you're kind of like talking to yourself and the employee. So there's like
yeah,
this miss of conversation,
sure.
right?
It's like your teenager they gloss over and they just stop listening, right? But that's one of my frustrating things with even some of my clients. They do a year-end review
Yeah.
and they say, "Well, you're not going to get a bonus because in February
Mhm.
you did X." And it's like,
Right. Right.
why didn't you tell me that in February? I could have fixed it. I could have done better. But
Right.
we don't have conversations on an ongoing daily basis, weekly basis. We wait until the end of the year and try to remember all the things that the people did. They've forgotten, you
Yes.
know?
Yes. Yes.
Urgh. Yeah,
Yes. And it's an interesting process as well, right? I mean, leaders that I've seen do this extremely well are leaders that kind of use the feedback loop as a continual conversation. So it might be quarterly, it might be a quarterly check-in, or it might be a monthly. Hey, here are the things that are going well. I still need you to focus on the project management side of it. There's a plan in place of how you can do that, and let's keep it moving. That builds a rapport. That shows the employee that, wow, this person is really vested in my development. They're vested in my learning,
exactly.
right? And so
Exactly.
that's a different engagement, right? Now there's a relationship in the work, and there's also trust being built, right?
Yep.
And you tend to get a different output of the input. Not every situation, but for the most part, I do believe people show up to give their best and do their best. I really believe.
Sure. But it's
What?
creating that environment, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, all right. All right. We're going to talk more about that, a lot more about that, because that's a subject near and dear to me, because I've had those kind of reviews too. Um, and I want to talk more about servant leadership and all the things you've done, the places you've worked, what you have going on right now. But before we get started, I've got 10 questions that I like to ask each one of my guests. Now, listeners know these are the questions made famous on the TV show Inside the Actor's Studio, where the host James Lipton asks these same questions of his Hollywood guests from TV, film, and stage. And I figure if they're good enough for the Hollywood elite, they're certainly good enough for my
There you
guests.
go.
All
Okay.
right. So, Dr. Tadia, if you're ready, I've got 10 questions for you.
Okay. Let's go.
All right. Question number one. What is your favorite word?
I don't know if it's one word. There's actually three. Don't give up.
I'll take it.
Okay.
That works. Okay. What is your least favorite word?
Failure.
What turns you on?
Purpose.
Nice. What turns you off?
Toxic behavior.
Mm. What sound or noise do you love?
Water.
And what sound or noise do you hate?
Uh, Gossip.
Mm. What is your favorite curse word?
Um, as close as I get, darn. Let's see. It might come out, what rhymes with was closest to it.
Yeah.
Starts with S. Um, but that's probably the closest.
Okay. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Wow. I would say news reporter.
Hmm, cool. And what profession would you not like to do?
Hmm. You know what? Uh, Probably, I know no one will want me in their rock band. So a band. I know for sure no one wants me in their band.
All right, final question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Oh, I do believe in God, and I hope he will say, servant well done.
Good job. Good job. Well, he's going to have a lot of stuff to go through because you have been busy, busy, busy with everything. Like I said, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, I want to talk about how you got your start, how you got into this whole thing, your philosophy, your thoughts on servant leadership, some of the things you encounter with the people you work with. What are they doing or not doing? And at some point, we'll transition into courage and leadership.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds
All
good.
right. So, listeners, we're going to talk about all that and probably a lot more right after this. So, stick with us. And I'm back with my guest, Dr. Tenia Davis. Tenia, thank you again for coming in and talking with us. Your book, again, you focus, your website focuses on servant leadership.
Mhm,
How have your personal experiences um, kind of shaped that belief in that servant leadership style?
mhm. So, I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of phenomenal leaders, right? And I've also had experience working with leaders, not a good experience. I mean, like any other career path, right? You encounter those that are wonderful and those, and I think in each situation I've learned something, right? However, where I most wanted to model my leadership style, I worked for a gentleman by the name of Tim Bennett, who was mentoring without even knowing he was mentoring, um, was modeling the behaviors of a servant leader without even calling himself a servant leader. And I was most impressed with his ability to lead a very diverse executive team and get the best out of each person. And he focused on the strength and helped round out the weaknesses. And that's not always easy to do. I've worked with some leaders that kind of just walk in with very strong biases. Either you fit or you don't. And so you tend not to really evolve and grow because you're trying to fit into a mold that might not be for you, right? And it might not serve the greater good because I think everybody brings their own superpower. And it's how
Mhm.
do you take these different superpowers and create something great? Um, and so I quickly wanted to form, and learn from this particular leader, because I saw the impact of it, the impact of employees feeling heard, valued, seen, respected, feel that they're learning, that they have the space to learn. There's grace, there's all these things that I think people show up to want to contribute to, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
then the other side of that is, I've also seen other leadership where, none of that exhibited, right? And so they either created an environment of competition, which is sometimes there's healthy competition and then there's not so healthy competition, or, their behavior was such that it created the same behaviors, right? Um, I remember at one company, I mean, the day will start with just negativity,
Mhm.
just negativity. And it unfortunately created more negativity. Nobody was happy. Nothing was right. And there was no ownership around anything except the blame game, right? And I
Right.
would leave work exhausted because it's like, well, what are we solving? We're solving personalities, we're solving biases, we're solving, some feeling that they should be leading
Right.
you know, um, and so all these different dynamics that did not yield a good work environment for a lot of folks. Uh,
Yeah.
and, uh, I've been in some environments where, the negativity was part of the culture itself, and the leaders didn't even realize that was the culture.
Yeah.
And
But they
so,
set that tone. They set that tone, right? That trickles down to people. If you've got a boss that's negative, then you kind of feel that's kind of the way we do things around here, right? So it starts at the top.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing I will say, sitting back watching is never the answer,
Mm.
right? And so assumptions tend to create the wrong narrative. And so participate, ask questions. Why did you make that call versus this call? Why wasn't I on that project versus, what else do I need to learn? What else do I need to do? Um, I think those are the hardest situations to manage. And that's why I say self-awareness is so important because if I see myself only one way and I don't see how others experience, then I'm never really going to get the true benefit of learning. I'm going to spend my time trying to convince you that I am this way, right? And
Right.
that takes a lot of energy too, versus, how can I lean in differently? What is I want to be part of this group that's doing some fun things. How do I do that, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a complexity as well. And I think in a highly charged workplace today makes things even more problematic. I think leading today is far harder than it was a couple of years ago. And the fight or flight, I think, is a lot stronger. And
Yeah.
that's when the claws come out. And and so, when I talk to my peers, I'm hearing kind of the impact of that people are just, I think
Sure.
people are just really charged now. And so something might have said yesterday is totally charging today,
Yeah.
right? Um, you did a, thank you for the job. You did okay. What do you mean I did okay? That was, well, I just said you did okay. I mean, that was just the language and so
Right.
it's just very interesting. I hope we can come out of this um,
Well,
better.
I think it's the managers, leaders are kind of finding their legs, right? Because you're right, things were different back in the past because in the past, not that long ago, but things were different because I don't think there was the focus on empathy and
Mhm.
on emotional intelligence and things like that. I remember I worked at Lockheed Aircraft out in California, and a manager kind of crawling across the conference table and grabbing some guy by the lapels and shaking him and screaming at him. It's like, wait, you don't see that kind of stuff today, but you've got some that old mindset where you have a job, you should be thankful for it.
Right.
And then you
Right.
have other managers who are really engaged and they want you to be the best that you can be, and that they're giving you opportunities and making sure you're using your skills, your strengths, right? Because you're right, everybody brings some superpower with them, but it's that the leaders that allow you to use that superpower, to
Yeah.
make you feel like you're actually
Absolutely. I
performing.
I
Yeah.
was in a conversation with a dear friend of mine, also human resources, and she was explaining, all the different dynamics that she's trying to help her leaders through. And, you know, she said something that has really made me think. She said, I really enjoy working with people that want to work, that want to be here. She said, it's hard to work with people that really don't want to be here because you spend more energy convincing them of the things that they feel is their truth, even though
Right.
it's not. And, um, I think that's kind of the place that and the dynamics that's playing out in all workplaces, just in different ways, is how do you connect in with folks that want to be there, that want to learn, and how do you connect in with those that don't, um, and keep the equilibrium in the organization, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think
But it's
that's
having conversations. It's
yeah,
having conversations with them. And I try to tell that to my clients. You can't wait till the end of the year to talk to your folks. Talk to them. Understand everybody's got their currency, what's important to them. Some people want accolades, some people want a little pat on the back in private. Some people want more money, some people want time off. Who knows? But you have to understand what motivates them
mhm,
and then motivate them,
yeah.
get them out there.
Yeah. And you have to participate, right? Like I can't read your mind. if you think a $25 gift card is an insult, how would I know that?
Right. Right.
I might think that's a wonderful thing. I would love to have a $25 gift card. And so I think that the different dynamics, I've worked with some that raise their hand for everything, and then I've worked with some that didn't, and then they will be upset if you didn't select them.
Right.
So it's leaning in, trying to figure out those different, dynamics. And I've worked with some phenomenal folks, and one of the things that I will say that has really made, working with the is a joy was just everyone having the same passion to do something great, doing it differently, different styles, different approaches, but a common goal. And,
Sure.
at the end of the day, that's when you feel like, wow, look what we did,
Right.
and that's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you feel like you've got some purpose and like you said, you're accomplishing something, not
Yeah.
just, you know, yeah, busy work. So let's talk about you a little bit. How did you get your start? And when you were growing up, did you know at some point I want to be an HR guru? When did you when did you get into the side of things?
I kind of fell into human resources. I was working on a project, and the project was extended, and we didn't have an HR formal department. And so we had to quickly put this group together. So I was voluntold actually into the
Okay.
job.
Good word. Yep.
And it wasn't, I was like, I didn't know a lot about HR at that time, and I was more on the techie side. And um, but I thought it was interesting because there's the analytical side, there's the interpersonal side, and it has different tentacles to it that are all in some ways different, but somewhat the same. And you in terms of using different skills. And um, so from there, I just stayed in human resources. I thought it was an interesting place. And when I started in HR, it was personnel. So it's been fascinating to watch it grow from personnel to strategic HR. And so I've been able to work in different departments of human resources. I think that also gave me visibility into how the cake is baked per se. Uh,
Mhm.
and so you get all these different ingredients, and then you put them in a bowl, and then you kind of bake it, and see what happens from there. But I found human resources as the backbone of organizations. And um, if HR is done right, it could really help an organization thrive and give employees a sense of being in a place where they spend 8+ hours a day. Um, and so I just kind of just grew up in human resources and had great mentors, and kind of just moved from there, always willing to learn something new.
Yep.
I think that's another one of the uh, I would say definitely gave me, oh, I would say the path to different opportunities was just being open to learn.
Yeah.
And I never approached anything as I have the answers. I just said, I would love to learn that, or
Sure.
learn more about it, if the opportunity arises. And I made myself available. I never said no. I never said it's not in my job description. Um,
Yeah.
And so, I just showed up every day to be part of whatever was there. And during the journey,
Nice.
I had some good managers, some not. I didn't focus on the personalities. I just focused on what can I learn in that moment until, there was a different assignment for me. So, um, I would say that was the key to really my growth. That was always recognized in wherever I worked, was that I was just
Nice.
open to participate, learn, and be part of the team.
Nice. Yeah, the opportunities come up. You never know what they're going
Mhm.
to be, right? So, well, take advantage of it. So, what are some of the common challenges that organizations face when they're trying to transition to a servant leadership type model? What are they missing, or what are they doing wrong, or not
I don't know if it's
understand
a matter of
completely?
doing wrong. Um, I do think, we've kind of grown up in the workplace as a very competitive environment, right? So there's a lot of fight or flight, I think, mentality in the workplace that somehow sometimes gets in the way, right? Because a servant leader is very, you're thinking of the other person, you're focused on the service, you're focused on building, the team up, you're focused on development, but you're also creating a roadmap for people to execute against, right?
Mm.
And it comes with a lot of humility and self-awareness. Ah, that's different, right? That's
Yeah.
different. And so, where I've seen gaps along the way where individuals might want to be servant leaders, there's that self-awareness is key. It's
Yeah.
just key. And if a person doesn't have self-awareness, then they're not open to the experience that people might have with them, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think one of the biggest gaps in leadership, I always say there's a role that everybody plays, right? If you have a leader that needs a little feedback and you don't give that leader feedback, then you're not helping that leader help you, right? Now, if the leader receives feedback and the leader rejects it, then you've done your part,
Yeah.
right? But the self-awareness, I think, is really, really key. And, I've gone into a lot of organizations where, I had to reboot, redefine, and those are the hardest situations to go into. Nobody is happy.
Yeah.
And, you're working through the forming, storming, and most likely staying in the storming phase a lot
Right.
longer than you will
A
like.
little longer than you want to. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, it's sometimes harder to kind of build in some of those relationships. But where I've seen, or to answer your question directly, where I've seen organizations excel, or at least the behaviors that I've seen are twofold. One, the commitment to developing everyone. And two, the self-awareness and humility. I say humility and self-awareness together.
Yeah.
'Cause I think that those two go hand in hand.
Do you ever have leaders like that kind of push back thinking this this is like soft skills?
Mhm.
So I know organizational change management is my background, right? Going in and helping companies understand the impacts of the change they're going through, how to communicate the change effectively, and how to lead their people through the change. And we've had managers, leaders at different times saying, that it's hand holding, it's soft skills, they'll do what they're told or they won't be here. Do you ever get pushback like that?
Oh, of course, of course. Having empathy for someone else is it's not as easy as you think.
Yeah.
I think we're in such a polarized state right now that, you know, moving to empathy could be hard for a lot of folks because everyone is stuck in their pain, right? And so if someone is stuck in their pain, it's going to be a lot harder for them to see your pain.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going on. We're talking at each other instead of to each other, right? And so with that, once you start that foundation, then there's the assumptions, perceptions, biases. And so you're piling up all the negative stuff. And so you can't get to the empathy and you can't get to the connection, right? And you don't
Yeah.
give the benefit of the doubt, which I think is very key, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is what's holding um, organizations back that want to have that sort of um, leadership style, right? And a lot of companies haven't seen the value of it directly, right? So if you look at, well, I know when I was growing up in the workplace, it was heavy competition, right? Heavy competition. Um, you know, it's the strongest person that survives.
Right.
Right. Well, the workforce today does not want to be led that way. They want to know you care. They want to know that you have an invested interest in their development. And so it's a different skill to
Yeah.
engage, right? Um, so it's a different operation altogether.
And we talked about creating that environment where you feel safe to say no, you feel safe giving your opinion or feedback, right, to somebody. How hard is it for them, and what do leaders need need to do to start building that type of environment where people feel safe enough to give feedback and take feedback, because it's helping instead of hurting them? Where do they
Yeah.
start? Where do leaders start?
Start establishing the trust. And that's always hard. And that's through communication. And if there's a lack of trust, create vehicles where folks can kind of air their concerns, right? Because the worst thing is if you get everybody that is upset huddled together, then guess what? You got a ball of mess. And that is sometimes the hardest to dismantle because that tends to take on a life of its own.
Yeah.
So definitely, I would say open up the lines of communication, get to know the folks in the group, right? What are the nuances of the group, right? How do they function collectively and how do they function what are their drivers, right? To gain an understanding. And in doing that, you're establishing a relationship, right? If you're the employee and you want to get to know the leader, take the time to get to know the leader, not the judgment you have of that person, right? But really get to know that person, right? And if it's a leader, get to know the team, right?
Yeah.
And that takes a little time because we're all, we're typically in a fast-paced environment where get the workout, get the workout, get the workout. And
Right.
so, that's more time taken, and it sometimes competes with getting the workout, right? And I would say depend on your leaders in your group. So there's no way, you know, the the one leader can mask that in a group if it's a large group. So rely on your leadership team, right? They should be establishing the relationship, right? That should be
Yeah.
your front line of what's going on, right?
Yeah.
But what tends to happen, what I've seen in organizations is that the staff person will bypass who they report to and go directly to the leader, and they're expecting all these things from that leader.
Right.
And it doesn't work that way. I mean, the capacity to do that is very hard. Or you're not really establishing relationship. You're establishing a moment in time. Oh, I said hello. I said good morning. Okay. We connected. Check the
Right.
box.
Exactly.
Right?
Step
Versus
out of the office door, yell hello to everybody, and say, "Okay, we've
exactly.
engaged." No.
Versus
Yeah.
engaging your leadership team and helping them establish, because that's your front line, right?
Right.
And then your leadership team roll up, hey, here's what's going on with this person, or this person wants to be promoted. Okay, do we have a career plan, or what is the development plan for this person, right?
Yeah.
So you know uh, it's a delicate walk these days, I think, than what I've seen before. um, it's very nuanced in the workplace today.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, there's a lot more, and a lot more is expected from our leaders nowadays. Everybody says, well, millennials are the ones who want to feel engaged. They want to feel, valued. They want to feel they have a purpose. Everybody wants that. And I
Mhm.
think that's where a lot of the stress used to come from, because we didn't know how to express that and
Right.
nobody really cared. Now we know people care. We want to work for somebody who cares. We want to work for somebody who is open, to that. So I think that's important for new leaders that are just now entering the workforce. What do you recommend they build as far as their leadership style, the servant leadership style? What kind of things should they start working on?
Communication.
That's
Communication.
the key to everything, isn't it?
Communication.
Communication.
Just
Yeah.
communication. It is so important. So important. Know how to communicate to different groups, right? Know how to connect in. You have, if you're trying to, one, learn your team, learn the needs of the team, right? And then you have to also be able to provide direction and a picture for people to follow, right? So those are communications down different streams and different interactions. But communication is key.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think part of the building the team is letting the team feel some ownership in some of the things that they're doing.
right.
Too many times, I think somebody tries to drive, you must do this way.
Hmm.
I'm of the mindset, I hired you because you have skills. Use your skills. Here's the end goal. Make this happen. And if
And
you need me,
transparency. And
yeah,
trans
exactly. Hmm. Um, Talking about leaders, what do you look for in a leader?
It's kind of shifted a little bit because I think the workplace is just very nuanced. But one, I would definitely say someone that has communication, good communication skills, someone that can disseminate information in a thoughtful way. Because the one thing that I've seen kind of get bottled down is if or where there's a disconnect with staff and leadership is if the middle leadership doesn't know how to disseminate information. So disseminating information is very important. Self-awareness, I look for definitely self-awareness, right? I look for those that are more of I call them harmonized, but can bring groups together to get the work out, right? Of course, trust and integrity. Trust is huge, especially in the workplace today. So I kind of have a long laundry list. Of course, competency is at the top. Uh,
Yeah,
but people that have the passion for the work, I think is so important because if it doesn't really exist with that leader, then whatever is there, their team will follow. And
yeah,
so definitely the passion for the work and agility. Agility is key. Agility is key because the
yep,
workplace is changing so fast. And, I might have entered into the job one way today and it might be something totally different tomorrow.
sure.
And, as leaders, we need to be able to adjust and adapt because we're still leading and we're leading a function and leading by example. So agility is definitely at the top of my list.
Absolutely. And I think in there has to be alignment
Oh,
between
absolutely.
the executive branch, the middle managers, right?
That's a good one. Mhm.
I've worked on a lot of projects where the executive team says, here's what we want to do. And the middle management said, that's not what we need. We need this.
Yeah,
And they start going different directions, thinking they're helping. It's like, you're not helping things.
right.
Everybody needs to be working towards the same goal. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, if I was to bump into any of your colleagues and talk to them about your leadership style,
Mhm.
what would they tell me? What kind of leader are you?
Let's see. They would say I'm a driver. I'm authentic. Um, I do care about the team. I'm no nonsense. And I play to the strength of the team. That's what has been shared with me.
Nice. And that's important. And like you said, of course, communication. It's
Yeah.
huge. It's huge with it.
And
Um,
transparency. I try to, that's one of the things that I try to have in front in everything that we do is transparency. Good
yeah,
news, bad news. Um, I make sure that the information is in front of everyone.
nice. Very cool. And on the program, we talk about courage, the types of courage that leaders need um, to do their job, the day-to-day type courage. We talked about empathetic courage, emotional courage, um, disciplined courage, intellectual courage, the ability to say, I don't know, the ability to be okay that you're not the smartest person in the room. Maybe your employees know more about what they're doing and things like that. That can be difficult for some managers. Is there a type of courage you think is most important to be a good, solid leader?
I think they're all, and some are situational. And, I was just in a conversation a week ago with someone I worked with many companies ago, and he said that, he doesn't have the courage to lead because it's just too, and he wasn't saying it in a negative way, but he was just saying in a negative way. He was just saying that, you have to be careful how you say things, when you say it, right? It's not misinterpreted. Or, if you're not putting someone on a particular project, then, circling back so they're not offended. And so I think courage, and that's why I said it really depends on the situation. Um, I think it's a lot harder to operate in the workplace because of so many reasons that exist today, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
courage to say no, the courage to say maybe not now, the courage to say, you're great here, but you still need to develop this muscle, right? The courage to say, I don't have the answer, right? And feel comfortable and safe in a space to say that, right? And still feel you
Sure.
have the respect of the team to lead, right?
And I think that that helps build that trust you were talking about earlier. If the executive or the leader says, I don't really know, we'll figure this out together, or I'm
Mhm.
not sure, I'll let me check into that. I'll get an answer and bring it back to you. I think that kind of creates that safe environment where the employees can come up and tell them, I don't know, or I made a mistake, or
I think that's the
I broke
humility and the
this.
self-awareness. I think that's the
Mhm.
humility and the self-awareness.
Yeah.
And that humility and self-awareness is key. It really is. The courage to have that,
Yeah.
right? And to say, I'm wrong. I was wrong on that one, right?
Yeah.
Um, I I worked with one leader who, he would never admit he was wrong and would literally argue until you just finally gave up. Um,
Yeah.
but what it created in the environment was lack of accountability,
Well,
right? So,
yeah.
I think the humility and self-awareness is key.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, where did you get your courage? Number one, to dive into HR, which is can be
Mhm.
a challenging area, fun, but can be challenging. The courage to go for your PhD and the MBA, and to work for all these great companies you work for, and to write all your books. Where did that come from?
I think they came from different parts and different times. The organizations, it really was through, it wasn't like I went out and said, I want to work for HARPO. I was leaving one company because the company had closed. I was asked to, through someone I had worked with before, and asked me to take on a confidential assignment. From there, um, the rest was history at HARPO, and I learned so much there, learned from everyone. I mean, HARPO was just a charge of learning, experiencing, everybody was kind of growing up together through it. And there was this zeal to be the best and bring out the best and do the best. And so it's a different energy. I've been in other organizations, too, that, the high, um, high expectations of learning as well as delivering, right? No room for error. And I mean, that's not humanly possible. And so,
Right.
but the willingness and openness to learn and fail, right? So I think kind of the combination of these different experiences has always challenged me to learn and do more. And the MBA was really, I wanted to understand the business side of what I do in an academic form, right? And the PhD has always been on my vision board. I've always wanted to um, add research to the things that I experience as an HR practitioner. And so it was really formed out of, how do we put science and definition to this experience that I'm having? I would read a lot of literature and journals, and like, it doesn't happen that way, you know? I'm debating, reading the article, like, why would they write that? That doesn't
Right.
happen that way. And so, um, I challenged myself. I was in my 50s. I'm still in my 50s. And when I decided to pursue and study, and um, I enjoy learning and I enjoy being around folks that also, I'm a geek at heart.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I like to geek out over information and get into lovely banters with people that also, feel they are experts in their field. And, there's, I think a lot of good energy around that. How do you get to this answer? And so it wasn't, something I planned 10 years. It just kind of evolved as I progressed.
Yeah.
And I really wanted the academic side of what I was doing.
Nice. Very cool. So future trends. Do you
Mhm.
see anything on the horizons that are coming at us for leaders in general, for organizational development?
Mm,
Um,
absolutely.
how can the profession kind of prepare for what's coming?
I don't have a crystal ball, but I do
Okay.
think the workplace will be more complex. We have more social issues in the workplace than we've had historically. We also have, the wellness, um, shaping different wellness topics shaping the workplace. Um, there is a higher percentage of folks, looking at different mental wellness,
Mhm.
challenges. And so I think that the different life is happening for folks that typically was not brought into the workplace that is now being brought into the workplace, and there's an expectation that the workplace supports it.
Right.
So I think that's one. I think as and those all have costs attached to them. And as organizations scale down that are doing that, I think the challenge will be how do I manage costs? How do I retain a workforce? How do I engage a workforce? I think engagement will have somewhat of a different meaning. How do I, connect
Yeah.
folks into the workplace? Also, I think will be continue to be a challenge for organizations is how do you connect people in and have remote and have in-office experiences?
Mhm.
And COVID showed us that we can definitely be remote, but COVID also showed us what isolation looks like, and we're still
Right.
having remnants of that. So, and then there were some that thrived like me. I was like, oh, one laptop closed. Okay, now I have to go study. I'll open up the other laptop. Is dinner ready downstairs? So, uh, you know, so I think for some, they kind of found their footing, found their voice, and they kind of were able to do it in a safe place, and then others, you know, did not have that experience. So I think we'll have to figure those things out as we continue. And then as competition on a global platform,
Mhm.
I do think that's going to be different. How we compete globally and how we look at a workforce. I do worry that, are we developing the next, group of individuals to replace us? What is our succession plan? A lot of companies don't have succession plans, right?
No.
So, where are we going to get this workforce from, right? We do have an aging population, and you know, I've had more people than I've seen before that are saying, I'm ready to tap out. Count me out. I'm
Mhm.
retiring. I'll take it early."
Sure. Yeah.
And so, people are finding other things that give them joy, and so the workplace doesn't have the loyalty that it used to have,
Right.
right? People are seeing that they can still have a healthy and full life with less, whereas historically we were taught you need more, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I think all of those combined in this moment in time, we have this combination, this ball of competing issues and wants and expectations that we haven't fully resolved.
Yeah.
And so
And
I
all
think,
that is coming through HR, right? HR is taking the brunt of that, aren't they?
yes,
Wow.
exactly. Um, so I think HR would be, is poised to have a position at the table, but it also, it's always HR's fault. It's kind of every HR person says that. It's always HR's fault.
Yeah.
No matter what we do, it's always HR's
I
fault.
didn't want to bring that up, but yes, you're right. Yeah, absolutely.
It's always
No, but I
HR's.
think because leaders don't understand how to deal with the mental illness and the wellness and all these things, they turn to HR. It's like, help me figure this out for me. So I think a lot more is going to fall on HR. Is would you say HR is a good area for people to go into? People are in school right now or something like that, trying to think of their career. Where am I going to go? What should I do? Should they be looking at HR?
I think HR, I've seen very good HR folks, and then I've seen people that take up space in HR. Good HR people are those that really understand the business and how to apply the whatever part they operate in, how to apply it to the business, right? To support
Yeah.
whatever the goals are. Um, where I've seen it as a disconnect is, I only want to do one thing. I want to do it this way, and not having the experience to understand the impact of the work, or, doing it in such a way, I say more robotic because the textbook says XYZ, but
Yeah.
there's the lived in experience that might be polar opposite. I think the HR professional today, one, definitely having the knowledge, the chops, that is a given. But I think it's one where individuals are agile, they are curious to learn, right? And they understand problem solving. And one of the biggest gaps I see is problem solving. And so we did it this way 3 years ago. And I think this is where some HR shops get trapped. We did it this way 3 years ago. We've always done it this way. I don't want to change it, right? So if HR is, not willing to learn or understand how to adjust and adapt to support the organization, then that's when HR does not do the organization a good service. Or have the communication skills to educate the organization of the transition. And as you know, change management is key, right? So, and it depends on the industry. Some industries move fast. And so you can't take a cookie cutter and say, well, this is what we did at this company, so I'm gonna do it this
Right.
way. Especially in fast-paced environments. In fast-paced environments, you break it, you build it, you break it, you build it. Whereas in other organizations, they're a little bit slower. It's more methodical. Having a roadmap, having change management in place, having communication. So it's more of a step by step by step.
Yeah.
And, one is not better than the other. It's just really understanding the environment that you're
The
operating,
situation. Right.
um, the situation. But again, the HR professional today, I think a little bit of therapy. No, I'm joking. Uh, no, I say that jokingly, but in some ways, understanding human behavior is
Yeah.
critical. I think employee experience, I've said this before, understanding, the behaviors of the organization is so key. And working with organizations, I know you understand that. Um, so yeah, you're talking to different audiences and trying to connect the dots, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, right? Um, but knowing when to, make that pivot. HR today is not easy. It is just
Yeah.
not easy. And leadership in HR is not easy. And so, I definitely say, um, really, really understand what industry and environment you want to be in. They're not all the same. And
Yeah.
sometimes if the organization is not mature, then you spend more cycles of time of just helping and developing, right? And that might not be the strength of that practitioner, right? Where if it is that strength, then yes, totally jazzed about the work, right? But know where the company is in their life cycle.
Yeah. Wow. Things are a changing.
Yeah.
Definitely. Tania, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. If people want to get in touch with you,
Mhm.
how can they do that? Do you have a website or is LinkedIn better for you?
I'm on LinkedIn. It's faster. I
Okay,
do have a website, but LinkedIn, a lot of the folks have been connecting on LinkedIn. I think everybody's on LinkedIn, so it's just faster
good. Okay. And your books, they're all available online,
on
correct?
Amazon.
On Amazon. Perfect. And what do you got? 6, 8 books out there now?
No,
Oh,
no, no, no. One is a collaboration, so
okay.
that wasn't
It still counts. It still counts.
well, the other is the other two. My first, the servant leadership, was an output of my dissertation,
Okay.
and
Nice.
then the feedback blueprint was just really, you know, over the last 20 some years. I mean, it's just a combination of all my experiences around feedback. So I
Nice.
literally took so many different scenarios and situations. And where I've seen it work at its best is through the constructive insights model with the add-on. So it was basically just combining the experience as a practitioner with a little bit of science.
Nice. Very cool. Well, I will have all those links down in the show notes so people can follow you, and find your books. And again, thanks for taking time out for us. And good luck with everything.
Thank you.
All right. Listeners, hope you guys were taking notes. A lot of good information here. Nothing is easy. The things we're going through right now, I know everything passes, right? This too shall pass. But while things are difficult, be humble, have humility, be aware of your surroundings and the people, and give a little bit of grace as you can. And the servant leadership, look it up and take it to heart, because it's definitely a way to go. And again, share this episode with your family, friends, colleagues, and stick around because there's always more coming. That's it for me, Coach Harlan, saying so long for now.